Good times never seem so good.
So good, so good, so good.
I've been inclined.
I think it's just you then, Coral. There's not a lot of support along the seafront for the singing, but maybe we'll have some sort of group sing along at some point. What a lovely lot. Steve Scruton enjoying one of the parties. But if you've got a house with a balcony overlooking this view that I've got, how lucky is that? Now we're looking to our right and we have something very historic, very special coming along now. Piloted by Andrew Davis, nicknamed Mum, chief pilot, a volunteer pilot. Andrew is flying for us today the Fairy Swordfish. Now this is an aircraft that dates back many years, and I'd like to mention somebody who was involved with the Fairy Swordfish. His name was Squadron Leader Lionel Welsh. He flew from HMS Victorious as part of the flight that spotted the Bismarck, which we're going to talk about. One of the main roles the Swordfish had, that history of spotting the Bismarck and attacking it. He never talked about his role in the Swordfish, but after my mother died, says Heather, I found his war record and loads of photos. So let's mention Heather, who lives and works in Clacton, and her dad, the late Squadron Leader Lionel Welsh, who was one of the pilots of this, the Fairy Swordfish, as it comes directly into us, banking up and dipping down the right wing, so we see the beautiful underbelly of this very old biplane. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about it and its illustrious past over many decades.
W5856 is the oldest surviving airworthy Fairy Swordfish in the world. She first flew on Trafalgar Day on the 21st of October 1941 and was a blackfish, built by Blackburn Aircraft at Sherburn in Elmet and delivered to 82 Squadron on the 20th of October 1941 for overseas transport to Gibraltar. She served with the Royal Navy's Mediterranean Fleet for a year. Little is known about her service in the Mediterranean, but it's likely she was based on the North Front in Gibraltar, carrying out patrols over the Straits. She was then returned to Fairy Stockport Factory for refurbishment during the winter of 1942 to 43.
The wonderful sound of that Bristol Pegasus engine we're getting from our microphones on BBC Essex. Passing this time, again showing us the underbelly from right to left. Very distinctive markings, which we will tell you about as well. And hi to Jonathan Hearn, who came all the way from Australia last year to see this plane. He came to see us at the Clacton Air Show. He's listening at home, down under. His father flew in these amazing aircraft.
It was such a privilege, Ian, wasn't it, to look at his father's logbook and see the training flights and the missions that he took part in. Now, this aircraft was used for advanced flying training. She was transferred to the Royal Canadian Navy in 1944, again for more training roles until the end of the war. She was disposed of and passed through several hands on civilian operators, one being a farmer who thought that her plans were to turn her into a crop sprayer, but she was quickly purchased by Sir William Roberts, who brought her over to Scotland to join his Strathfallan collection. And then she arrived in Crete in August 1977, but in a badly corroded condition. Then in 1990, the aircraft was bought by British Aerospace and completely restored to flying condition. Her first successful test flight was in May 1993, when she was gifted to the Royal Navy Historic Flight, and 3 years later was adopted by the City of Leeds in tribute to the local companies that built the Swordfish components during World War II. She now wears the city's coat of arms and the name on her port side just forward of the pilot's cockpit.
Where I got now is
In 2003, she was grounded due to corrosion on her wing spars, and her future really looked uncertain. But with the great generosity of BAE Systems, they stepped in and constructed a brand new set of wings, which were delivered in 2012. She was then finally restored to full flying condition and saved for the nation by a huge grant from the Peter Harrison Heritage Foundation. The aircraft rejoined the display circuit 10 years ago in 2015, and she carries a new paint scheme which depicts the swordfish of 820 Naval Air Squadron during the attack of the Bismarck in 1941.
Yes, the paint job really is quite striking. It's a real black and white stripe across each top and bottom wing, and also at the tail. From May 2024, this fairy swordfish got that freshly painted D-Day invasion stripes colour. And we talked about the role that the swordfish played, a crucial role in protecting convoys from U-boats attacks in the Battle of the Atlantic. Also sinking the Italian fleet at Taranto, and of course crippling the mighty Bismarck. But Taranto is a battle that really stands out from the 11th and 12th of November in 1940. It was a battle between British naval forces under Admiral Andrew Cunningham and Italian naval forces. The Royal Navy launched the first all-aircraft ship-to-ship naval attack in history, employing 21 of these fairy swordfish biplanes, the torpedo bombers, from the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious in the Mediterranean Sea. The attack struck the battle fleet of the Regia Marina at anchor in the harbour of Taranto, using aerial torpedoes despite the shallowness of the water. And according to Admiral Cunningham, Taranto and the night of the 11th to the 12th of November 1940 should be remembered forever as having shown once and for all that in the fleet air arm, the Navy has its most devastating weapon.
The Swordfish has a stately 90 knots cruise when lightly laden and 82 knots when there's a torpedo underslung. It has a very reliable engine. Now, the crew on board those missions were really not afforded too much comfort. There was no heater on board, it's open cockpit, and all you've got is fabric covering on the seats. They had really no shelter from the cold in the winter. It would have been particularly cold on those Arctic missions. Front there, we can see just how highly manoeuvrable the Blackfish is. Despite her lack of speed, there was very few criticisms of the aircraft other than could you perhaps go a little bit faster, but ultimately reliable. And sometimes that slow speed was actually to her advantage, as the enemy guns often found it difficult to offset their sighting on such a slow target.
Well, a beautiful little wing waddle as the fairy swordfish and Andrew Davis, mum to his friends, made its pass from left to right, just dipping one wing, then the other, one wing, then the other, in a very graceful manoeuvre. If you're in that barge over there, that Thames sailing barge, you'd have had a fantastic view from the other side to what we get. Absolutely beautiful. And we're so pleased and proud to have had the Swordfish here for us today. Clacton, shall we thank the team from the Fairy Swordfish?
And thank you to Navy Wings, part of the Flying Navy Heritage Trust, a charity behind Navy Wings, working to preserve Britain's great naval aviation heritage. They rely solely on public donations to work in maintaining, presenting and flying this unrivaled collection of historic naval aircraft. So do support them, and thank you very much to them and to volunteer pilot Andrew Mum Davies for a wonderful display this afternoon.
The sound of Essex. The Clacton Air Show.
For our residents and for our businesses, a fantastic display, and also draw people in, spending money, making our businesses successful, and actually seeing people enjoy themselves.
So a happy boss at the moment?
Very happy, smiling, and I'm smiling because I'm seeing so many smiling faces here today.
Ian Davidson, Chief Executive of Tendring District Council, thank you for that. And as you'll have heard in the background, as we were chatting to Ian, we have our second Spitfire of the day. Mark Disco Discum at the controls of this Mark 19 Photo Reconnaissance Spitfire from the Rolls-Royce Historic Air Fleet.
The Supermarine Spitfire is produced in greater numbers than any other British combat aircraft before or since World War II. 20,341 Spitfires were built in 22 different variants, and the aircraft remained in production for 12 years. The prototype's maiden flight took place on the 5th of March 1936, and Mark I Spitfires entered RAF service in August 1938. The development potential of the original design allowed the Spitfire to establish and maintain air superiority of the vital defence of Britain and to keep pace with the improvements in performance of enemy fighters throughout World War II. Spitfires fought in every operational theatre of the war and remained in RAF frontline service up to 1954. At the end of its development, the Spitfire carried an engine producing more than twice the power of the original. Maximum takeoff weight and rate of climb had been more than doubled. Its firepower had increased by a factor of 5, and its maximum speed had been increased by a third. And of course, this is a Mark 19 Spitfire, one of the last types built during World War II, powered by the Griffin engine.
And didn't we just hear that power, 2,050 horsepower Griffin engine? Absolutely wonderful. Now just high in the sky to our left, but about to swoop much lower over to the sea, aiming at that orange marker buoy in front of us. Tipping the left wing down, we see the underbelly of this wonderful blue Spitfire, that kind of beautiful RAF blue that is just so evocative.
The first Supermarine Spitfire PR Mark 19 was completed in October 1944, powered by a Rolls-Royce Griffin 66. A direct descendant of both the Buzzard engine and the R-type racing power plant that included its design roots as a tight blower for cabin pressurization. The engine is a 2,050 horsepower liquid-cooled V12 with 2-speed, 2-stage supercharger. Capable of flying up to 445 miles per hour at a flight ceiling of 26,000 feet and a range of 1,800 miles.
Now this particular aircraft was used to train Lightning pilots to fight Mustangs, has spent time over the years with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, and it also features in the 1969 film Battle of Britain, where it was painted with the temporary markings to represent different squadrons during the filming. It's now back in that RAF blue, as I mentioned, representing its time as a photographic reconnaissance aircraft. The Rolls-Royce Heritage Flight acquired her in 1995, one of the final 3 Spitfires to be retired from the RAF. And they absolutely love bringing her to displays like this around the UK during the summer season.
Rolls-Royce see this aeroplane as a dynamic and exciting ambassador, not just for the company, but also to inspire the younger generation and hopefully encourage them to choose science or engineering-based careers.
Oh, that's better as the cloud clears slightly. A little bit of sun comes through just to warm us up a little. It's gone a little chilly, I'll be honest, on the seafront, but the warmth of the sun soon breaking out and starting to glint on that blue colour scheme of the elliptical wing of the Spitfire, coming straight towards us now on the seafront before heading up into the sky, banking round to her right, our left.
Now, PR Mark 19, this particular Spitfire was a final photo reconnaissance variant of the Supermarine Spitfire, and her very last operational sortie by an RAF Spitfire was on the 1st of April 1954, when the mission during the Malaya campaign over the jungles of Johor. The Mark 19 was also the last RAF serving Spitfire type, the last being a Mark 19 temperature and humidity flight at RAF Woodvale, not being struck off until June 1957. She bears her original wartime colour scheme of PRU blue, an original RAF serial of PS853, although it's also known by its national registration of GRRGN. Rolls-Royce bought her in 1996 as a highly recognisable example of British engineering excellence. She remains as popular today as she was just after the war, and represents the pinnacle of Spitfire development, with the highest service ceiling, the longest endurance and the highest speed of all Spitfire marks. And thank you to Mark Disco Discom, who was awarded an MBE in the New Year Honours List in January of this year. He flew as a fighter pilot with the BBMF for 7 years, then becoming officer commanding. He then progressed on to become he handed over, to squadron leader Mark Sugden in October 2021, where he joined 29 Squadron, the Typhoon Operational Conversion Unit at RAF Coningsby. He flies the Rolls-Royce Spitfire Mark 19 during displays. Many congratulations to Disco on this richly deserved honour in commemoration of his 7 years of service to the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight.
And as we hear that iconic song when the lights go on again, a timely chance to remember VJ Day that was marked just last week, the anniversary, 80 years of VJ Day, which officially brought World War II to, thankfully, conclusion. Grandad and Ethan are watching out to sea. So there we are, a couple linked by the radio, and what a treat. Now, we weren't going to promise you red, white and blue smoke because we weren't sure it was going to happen, but by goodness it has. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of Clacton, let's welcome the Firebirds. Red smoke from the tips of one wing, blue smoke from the other, and white from the rear of the aircraft. Both of them trailing red, white and blue as they fly from right to left now.
Flying the RB4 aircraft, which is often nicknamed the hot rod of the sky. The RB aircraft are perhaps the most popular self-build aircraft in the world. Originally designed in America, but these have been highly modified for aerobatic routines. We're having a little boogie here on the commentary point here with the fantastic music accompanying this aerobatic display from the Firebirds. These aircraft weigh as little as a third of a VW Golf car, around 500 kilograms, but they are powered by a mighty 5.3 litre 160 horsepower engine, giving it the performance of a hot rod. Normal cruising speeds around 160 miles per hour, but these pilots don't do normal.
No, they don't do normal.
So during the display you can see them travelling as high as either 0 miles per hour or 200 miles per hour as they make the most of the entire flight envelope.
Wow, close formation from Nigel and John as they now fly from left to right, banking up into the sky, splitting off, fanning out, and heading in either direction. Now, what I love about the fact that, as we've said before, when the smoke trails out of the aircraft, you can see the precision of the flying because it marks the track of the aircraft. Both done a loop in the sky, now one is chasing the other. The sun is glinting off their white bodies. The livery is all white on these Firebird aircraft.
A lovely little wing over to the left there as they fly in absolute close formation aerobatics. The pilots are highly practiced and trained at aerobatic flying. They practice their routine not just in the air but also walking it through on the ground. And in fact yesterday they told me about the routine using spoons at the breakfast table.
You should have videoed that. That would have been something to see, I think.
Now, one of the things the pilots also do before breakfast is they go running, because peak physical fitness is super important for display pilots. During the routine, they will be pulling up to 6G. The human body is really only designed to sustain 1G at any time. Pulling 6G is the equivalent of a cow sitting on your chest.
The lights on the tips of each wing piercing through the clouds at that point, as they head one to the left, one to the right, up into the sky now.
Now they're performing what you call opposition manoeuvres now. We've got one aircraft far apart from the other, but they are still in absolute synchronisation. So a derry turn and then flying towards one another on the straight and level, directly in front of the crowd line as they pull up with the smoke trailing into a heart.
They did a heart from the bottom up rather than the top down. Very nice.
They like to keep us on our toes. Now, of course, when the pilots reach the top of the heart and they just tip over the top, that's when they start to pull negative G, and they will pull up to -3 negative G while performing this routine. Now, I can tell you that G-force in the negative is extremely uncomfortable, and that's where the peak physical fitness really comes into play. The pilots will be grunting and clenching their muscles as they perform the routine.
clenching and grunting. I can imagine them now as the two now flying. Almost looks like they're going to cross over right in front of us. One was coming from the left, one was coming from the right. They did that wonderful close pass.
And I love it, Ian, as they pull up to the vertical and then they twirl as they go.
Very graceful. Now, I know Nigel has been quoted as saying, "I've been lucky enough to do a mix of flying, military and civil stuff, big aeroplanes and little aeroplanes, but this is really a lot of fun." And John, my number 2, does a lot of Spitfire and Mustang flying, but he says what we do in the RV4 is some of the best flying there is.
First time they've done that in a daytime routine. They are now available to do gender reveals. So if you fancy having a gender reveal with a bit of something different in the sky, get in touch with the Firebirds. Now, pilot number 2 is John Doddy, who grew up in Scotland. In his schoolboy years, he was into model aircraft and he joined the Air Training Corps. He went on to Dundee University and studied electrical engineering before learning to fly in Cessna 152s at Dundee Flying Club. He then went on for a career as a research scientist with the Ministry of Defence Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. He then took on to flying chipmunks, tiger moths and tipsy nippers, and then had the opportunity to fly the RAF's Douglas DC-3. He then spent some time flying the British Military Parachute Centre in West Germany before taking a commercial job flying for Scottish Fisheries Protection Agency before eventually going to the airlines to fly Boeing aircraft. When he's not flying airliners, John likes to pursue his passion for flying old aircraft. DC-3s, Firebirds, Spitfires, Hurricanes, Mustangs, Sea Furies, he's flown them all. And he's never happier when he's in the air. Crowd centre pitching up, the smoke is going on and there's flying in opposite directions. Are they going to give us another heart?
Oh, that's a big heart. You can see how the breeze has picked up because the smoke marking out that heart is moving quite quickly now towards Clacton Pier. Thank you so much for the heart. Thank you for the love. I think Clacton, that was for all of us from John and Nigel. Let's hear it for the Firebird. And as we listen to the Beach Boys from the beach here in Clacton, arriving from over the pier and soaring up towards Jaywick, the Mustang has arrived.
Flying to you this afternoon is Dave Pulliston from the Ultimate Fighters. Dave's been passionate about flying vintage aircraft for as long as he can remember, and he's a very well-known face around the air display circuit.
And after that low, fast pass, From left to right, we get a slower pass with the right wing down, a wonderful view of the underbelly of this P51 Mustang known as Jersey Jerk, and a wonderful sound of that Packard Merlin engine as it soars into the sky over the end of Clacton Pier. Not looking in bad shape, Sam, for an aircraft manufactured in 1947.
Yes, she was manufactured in Melbourne, Australia. Now, of course, most of the Mustangs were actually produced for the US Air Force, of course, but a lot of them were produced in California, but this one was built in Australia. And the reason I think she's in such good condition is she spent many years of her life, many decades, actually sat in storage. Although she was delivered in 1948, she sat in store until 1957. Decades later, she reappeared as a restoration project via Fort Lauderdale in Florida, shipped back to Australia to Queensland in May 1995. It was then in her first flight after her restoration in 2002, where she was configured with dual controls for the passenger seat. And then 2 decades later, she was eventually sold in 2020 and acquired by Ultimate Warbirds, who now own her and operate out of Sywell in Northamptonshire. They repainted her in the stunning colours of the P51D Mustang Jersey Jerk, a personal mount of Major Donald Strait of the 361st Fighter Squadron 356th Fighter Group. On the 5th of May 2024, she took her maiden flight as a rebuilt, restored aircraft.
So this aircraft honours Donald J. Strait, a top ace of the US 8th Air Force who flew from Martlesham Heath in Suffolk in World War II. In 122 missions, he achieved 13.5 aerial victories, including 3 in a single mission in 1945. The P-51 that Major Strait was best known for was his Jersey Jerk. In 1944, he became the CEO of the 361st Flying School. He was decorated 9 times, and the final honour was induction into the New Jersey Aviation Hall of Fame.
Now, yesterday evening we were honoured with an appearance of another Mustang, the Moonbeam McSquire, the P51D. And talking to the pilot, Alistair Stegg-Williams, I asked him, why is it so special to fly a Mustang? What do you love about it? And he said, well, put it this way, if I had a choice, I would have flown a Mustang as a fighter aircraft and flown a Spitfire for leisure. He said it's an absolute honour and a privilege to fly such a wonderful and capable aircraft. The P-51 Mustang was the most versatile aircraft, capable of escorting bombers on their long-range missions, engaging in dogfights and dropping down to destroy the German targets on the ground. She's an American long-range single-seat fighter and fighter bomber, which has also been used not just for World War II, but the Korean War and other conflicts. Although she was an American aircraft, she spent a lot of time flying out of Britain during World War II, supporting Britain and the Allied troops on those bomber escort missions. Her full potential was developed when the USA realised that the aircraft had really been ignored for far too long, and they forged the American airframe, but with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which would be unmatched by any other piston aircraft of World War II.
Now, this year's Mustang display carries a poignant local connection due to the 80th anniversary of the loss of a P-51D off the coast of Clacton during the Second World War. Yes, not far from where we stand today in Clacton on January the 13th, 1945. A Mustang known as Little Zippy ditched into the North Sea, tragically claiming the life of Flying Officer Raymond E. King. It was decades later that the aircraft was recovered and now forms a centrepiece of the East Essex Aviation Museum, which is just around the coast from here in Point Clear, St Osyth. And there's an extract from the words which accompany their display of Little Zippy. They say Flight Officer Raymond King, based at Wattisham in Suffolk, experienced engine failure and ditched his aircraft just 800 yards from the seafront in Clacton. Although rescued by the crew of the Clacton lifeboat, he never survived his ordeal in the bitterly cold sea and tragically died from hypothermia. His body was laid to rest at the American Military Cemetery at Madingley, and after the end of the hostilities was returned to the United States of America. The aircraft, Little Zippy, was recovered from the sea in 1987 and can now be seen in the East Essex Aviation Museum in Point Clear. Now, we can hear from a man called Albert Scott who remembers seeing that tragedy.